What's going on here? Wait, the gate is locked. How do I get... Fuck! The Halloween season always holds a special place in my heart. It gives me a reason to play something a little bit more spooky, and today we're going to be playing a game that's definitely known for its atmosphere, world building, and music. I'm talking, of course, about Silent Hill, a game in which a lot of people have either heard about or have played, and the series is still going on great to this day with, that. Well, let's not talk about how awful Konami has been as a company to their past employees, and let's talk about what made survival horror a mainstay. I'm talking, of course, about Resident Evil.
Okay, obviously I know 2 different games, but you cannot deny if there wasn't a Resident Evil, there sure as shit would not be a Silent Hill. Let's talk about the development of the game. To give the Clip Notes version of it, Konami wanted a survival horror game to basically compete with their competitor, Capcom, considering they wanted to join the whole survival horror bandwagon. So they wrangled up the developers that were basically the outcasts of Konami, the people that didn't really fit in with the other projects that were going on at the time. Konami wanted the game to be fully 3D instead of the whole fixed camera, pre-rendered visuals that Resident Evil had, and the game had to be spooky. So Team Silent was made to develop this game, and after 3 years of development, Silent Hill was made. The game was initially inspired by small American towns that you pass alongside on a long road trip, alongside literary works like The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle, Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and pretty much anything done by Stephen King, which isn't shocking considering you see Red Rum in the game. I guess the most I got out of those were the whole psychological fear of the unknown, which this game fully takes advantage of, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
I'll be honest with you guys, this is only the second time I've played through this game, the first time being about 2 years ago. I'll be using a PS3 for this review, not only for having better picture quality, obviously, but an original copy of Silent Hill has it's gone up. It's a little over $100 on eBay right now, and that's something I can't afford right now. Now let's get into the game's story. Now, this game isn't as deep as later entries like Silent Hill 2, for example, so if you're expecting Pyramid Head or fucking scary but very sexy looking nurses, then that's going to be in the later games. So, let's head into the world of Silent Hill.
The game begins with you, Harry Mason, driving with his adopted daughter Cheryl, going on vacation to the town known as Silent Hill. Believe it or not, people find this place as a resort. Really now. Anyways, Harry sees someone in the middle of the road, swerves his car, and crashes. Waking up to see his daughter is now gone, so Harry goes out and tries to find her. You wander across town until you hear a siren and everything goes dark. You're in a dimly lit area getting attacked by small monstrosities, and after you die, you wake up in a diner with a police officer named Sybil, who also crashed their bike and got stuck into the town with you. So far, she seems like the only sense of humanity in this town. She walks with you and helps you find your daughter while you pick up your first weapon and the radio. Now, one of the things that Silent Hill pretty much set the standard for is sound designs for horror games. Now, of course, other games use a somewhat foreboding sound to indicate something scary is coming, but in this game, the radio tells the player that an enemy is coming. And if you're running around the dark corners of this town and hear the static of the radio go off, you know something's around the corner.
I mean, can you imagine if that happened in real life? I mean, look at the speaker right here. What if, it just had... Okay. Just gonna put this right here. Let's head back into the review.
So Harry wanders across the town and he's led to believe that his daughter might be in the town's elementary school. That's highly inspired by Kindergarten Cop out of all things. One trip to that place and now you're in the other world. Now here's a good place to talk about the game's combat. When you hit the R2 button, you go into a sort of action mode, where you attack via melee attacks or with your gun, which given the amount of ammo that's around you, you're going to be using your gun. Now, I probably got this much ammo to begin with because you don't need to attack everything in this game, believe it or not. You could ignore or run past certain enemies that are in your way and it won't affect what's going on. Sure, you basically have to run for your life, but it's a good way to save ammo because if you don't know what you're doing, you might up in a sudden boss battle or a place where you can't run and you have to attack. Speaking of which, if you hit the R2 button, it automatically locks on to whatever enemy is nearest to you, which is super handy and not relying on the jerky tank controls, which I'll get into later. After going up a set of stairs, you go into a world that looks somewhat familiar, but extremely fucked up. You kill a monster that was previously mentioned in a book, and you're back into the fog-ridden, normal Silent Hill. Then you go into a church and meet a lady by the name of Dahlia Gillespie. Harry actually listens to the somewhat crazed lady and what she's saying, given that she mentions something about Cheryl, but doesn't get into too much detail about it, aside from going to the hospital on the other side of town. And so he heads there and meets a doctor by the name of Michael Kaufman, which, by the way, he's named that way because the first and last names were the founders of Trauma, you know, the Toxic Avenger, Classic Nukem High Trauma. I love that company for the stupid movies that they've made and the huge impact that they've done to the whole indie scene.
Look out!
Alright, back to the game. You go into the other world by going onto a floor of the hospital that didn't seem accessible beforehand. This is one of those examples of the psychological horror that this game has, by playing with the player's expectations and basically fucking with the player. Heading into a place that you didn't mean to go to or showing something previously not there, and surprisingly, with very few exceptions, the game doesn't have that many jump scares, which is definitely a welcome change of pace to many recent horror games. Just having a spooky thing pop up with a loud noise to scare the player with games and, hell, many films, this gets old fast. And it's pretty much what I like to call a cheap scare, if that makes any sense. But Silent Hill goes into it differently by playing with the uncertainty of the world changing, so does the game from time to time. Of course, if you played this game before then, you know what's coming, but you get my point.
Of course, if you saw the horrific imagery in the game in real life, you would question your own sanity. I'm just gonna turn this off. You know, don't want it to go off again, you know. So, back to the game.
Harry explores the hospital and meets Lisa, a nurse there that's not only the other person he meets in the other world, she weirdly enough doesn't know what's going on, aside from her knowing the world around her is not the same. They talk for a few minutes on what's going on, and then he goes out of the other world and heads to the Silent Hill Mall. I feel like the bulk of the story is pretty much Harry meeting people and going from point A to B and so on. We really don't get to know the characters, which for a story-driven game I would normally criticize, but in this case, the uncertainty that Silent Hill creates, Harry is basically the player with a goal. We get to know Silent Hill thanks to him being a tourist. We don't really know who this guy is and why he talks like this.
My daughter. I've got to find her.
But at the same time, it builds the world of Silent Hill. Silent Hill itself is the main character. After beating a weird slug-looking monster and a giant moth, that's probably Mothra, Harry heads to the sewer and...
Really? A sewer level? Every game has a sewer level.
Okay, to be honest, this isn't that bad, and it doesn't go for too long, but fuck, I hate this trope in games. Anyways, we head to the resort part of Silent Hill, and we have a choice to do the one and only side quest. Basically, read something, open a door, get an item, easy. The reason why this is here to begin with is to split off the endings. There are 5 different endings for this game, and the developers said they're all canon, including the alien ending. The joke ending. Right. Anyways, Harry runs into Sybil, which they run into Dahlia, and she warns them once again about the great darkness that's going to be happening, and they need to help find Cheryl. Although once again sounding very sketchy and mysterious, so Harry runs to this lighthouse where he runs to the top of it and...
Wait!
What the fuck? So, can I do anything in here? I guess not. Alright, I'm out of here.
Harry heads back to the boat where he was at, and Sybil is nowhere to be found. So they head to the sewers again, and well, I actually don't hate this part. I think what makes this part work in comparison to the previous sewer level is because A, it's not that long, and B, the sound design makes this place very unsettling. The sound design overall throughout the game is very nerve-wracking, like something I can't imagine anywhere else. The soundtrack on its own was inspired by industrial metal like Nine Inch Nails, for example, and I fucking love Nine Inch Nails. Loud mechanical noises that fit well into making you feel like something is just not quite right in this world. There's a lot of rooms in this game which have specific sounds that just make you feel like you want to get out of there as soon as possible. After Harry runs into Sybil, well...
I may have done cooped here. Okay, so there's a point in the game where you can pick up a certain item in the hospital to save Sybil, but I forgot to do that. So... bye, Sybil. Wow, she is surprisingly one of the toughest enemies in the game.
After that, well, you run into Alyssa. Now, who was Alyssa? Well, thanks to some vague flashbacks the game shows you, Alyssa is the daughter of Dahlia Gillespie. She was used as a sacrifice in her mother's cult, and the Silent Hill Hospital saved her badly burned body, including Michael Kaufman. Alyssa's torment raises hence why the Otherworld is a thing to begin with. Well, that and the spooky cult stuff. The Otherworld is a physical manifestation of Alyssa's torment. Now, after the final part of the game, where Harry runs into previous areas in a sort of flashback kind of area, we run into Lisa one last time. Lisa realizes that she herself is one of the dead nurses that roams across the hospital to begin with, hence why we only see her in the Otherworld, and only at the hospital. Then, one of the most unsettling part of the games happens.
This part of the game is not easy to watch. It's horrifying to see someone that you've gotten to know throughout the game and is also one of the nicest people throughout the entire game to suddenly die right in front of you. But at the same time, it plays this really nice song at the end. What the
After a few flashbacks, it's boss battle time. Now, depending on whether or not you did the side quest earlier or saved Sybil, you get a different boss battle where you basically kill the demonic form of Alyssa, I'm assuming. After you do so, you don't get your daughter back, but rather a baby. Now, for what I heard, this is answered much more clearly in Silent Hill 3, but for the time being, this is just odd. And, well, that's the game. Overall, Silent Hill's story is left to the player's imagination to fill the gaps the game leaves, once again playing on the fear of the unknown aspect. Personally, for the time, I find Silent Hill's story great for what it is. It's certainly different in terms of direct storytelling that many other games had at the time. Rather, it told the story in pieces and not giving the player all the pieces to understand what's going on. Now, is the game scary after all these years? Well, to answer that question, absolutely. Thanks to the amount of atmosphere the game creates with a dense fog, which, if you didn't know this already, this was made originally to render the rest of the world like so many other games at the time. But Silent Hill uses this as a part of the town. I'm pretty sure if you think Silent Hill, one of the first things that comes to mind is fog. The unreal and non-human remains that scatters across the world, whatever or whoever those people were, are now plastered across the walls of Silent Hill. It's fucking terrifying to think that you could be next on that wall. With all that's going for this game, the game still does have some problems. The overall gameplay is, well, interesting for its time. First and foremost, if you haven't noticed this already, the game uses tank controls, similar to Resident Evil, meaning if you press up on the D-pad, then you move forward, no matter what way the camera is facing, and moving side to side rotates the directions you'll move. Now, yes, this is aged horribly, but at the same time, to be honest, I don't find this too intrusive. Yes, I will run into walls thanks to these tank controls, or be running towards the camera and not seeing where I'm going, but that has more to do with the camera. Now, that's something I'm not a fan of. Aside from the problems I just mentioned, the game likes to swing the camera around everywhere sometimes, or when the camera's on rails to make the game a little bit more scarier. Now, I like the fixed camera back in Resident Evil, so this is actually pretty cool. It's almost like something's watching you and you're seeing it from their perspective. It's a nice departure from the swinging camera that's supposed to make the game feel more disorienting, which is a great idea on paper, but in practice, it makes the game more frustrating if anything, and can lead to a few cheap hits. Now, if you hold the L2 button, you can actually control the camera to see in the distance, but not to recenter the camera, which is why I never used it. Luckily though, Silent Hill has a quick turn option, turning in the opposite direction by hitting both the L1 and R1 buttons, which alleviates some of the problems I have in navigation in this game. Moving on to the puzzles in the game, well, surprisingly there's only a handful throughout this game, but the ones that are here are pretty good. I wish there was more of them, to be honest with you. It's a nice diversion from the rest of the game. The piano puzzle, I was a little stuck, to be honest with you, but the stone puzzle and the final puzzles in the last area of the game weren't too bad. I know later games have more of them, so I'll be excited to play them when I have the chance. The only real problem I have, though, is finding items. I mean, it's kind of a hindrance with the game thanks to the whole grainy visuals, which works in the game in terms of world building, but at the same time, it's a bitch to tell what items you need to pick up and all. Like, look here. I thought this thing was a key item or something, but no, it's just a blood splatter on the floor. The last thing I really need to mention in terms of gameplay is the map. Now, for new players, you're thinking, what's the big deal? It's a map. Well, thanks to navigating throughout the world and seeing what areas are open and which roads are literally out of existence, Harry writes on the map to update himself and the player on which areas to go, which is super handy.
So overall, what's going on? That was weird. That was really weird. Let's get back to it. Silent Hill is an absolute masterpiece for its time.
The game lives up to the hype, with the amount of atmosphere it creates, the music, the puzzles, and even the story. The only real problem I have with the game is the camera, the somewhat grainy visuals, which works well with the game, but it's hard to find some items for puzzles and stuff like that. And, well, that's about it. I really can't wait to play some of the more later numbered entries in the series. I heard those are good at least. I don't know about the later ones, but we'll find out. Play this game if you haven't already. Although, if you don't want to dump $100 on a physical copy on eBay, then download this game on PSN for $6 like I did. Or emulate it if you don't want to give Konami your money, which is completely understandable.
Once again, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you're new to my channel, there's a wonderful little playlist of all my previous game reviews that you guys can watch right over there. Please leave a like and a comment on what's one of your favorite horror games. Also, comment if you want to see any other game reviews that I want to do in the future. You never know what I can make, you know? But thank you guys for watching. Stay safe, and have a spooky day.